May God arise. May his enemies be scattered. May his foes flee before him. Wow, what a way to start.
It really hits you, doesn't it? No gentle introduction there.
Not at all. It paints this incredibly powerful picture right away. Enemies just, scattering like smoke or like wax melting.
Total disappearance. Complete power.
So welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into one particular chapter of the Bible.
Psalm 68, a really packed one.
Absolutely. We're going to explore its messages, try to unpack some of that, intense imagery, and just see what insights we can pull from this ancient text.
What can it tell us today? Let's get into it.
Okay, so verses 1 to 3.
Yeah.
That opening drama, God arises, enemies scatter. You mentioned the imagery, smoke, wax.
Yeah.
It's about utter destruction for the wicked, right?
It really is. It's about the futility of opposing God. When he acts, the opposition just ceases to exist. There's no halfway.
But what strikes me is the immediate turn. Right after that, it talks about the righteous.
Exactly. They be glad and rejoice before God. They be happy and joyful.
So it's the same divine action, but the effect is completely opposite depending on who you are in relation to God.
That's a core theme right from the get-go. For God's enemies, his presence means destruction. For the righteous, it's the source of ultimate joy and safety, a very clear divide.
It really sets up this worldview where God's power isn't like neutral. Its impact depends on your alignment with him.
Precisely. And from that powerful opening, the psalm then shifts a bit, doesn't it? Verses 4 to 6 move into a call to praise and start describing who this God is.
Yeah, sing to God, sing praise to his name, extol him who rides on the clouds. His name is the Lord, and rejoice before him. That phrase, rides on the clouds.
It sounds so grand, almost cosmic.
It is. It's an image you find in the ancient Near East, often associated with supreme deities, signifying transcendence, power over the heavens, huge authority.
But then, almost in the same breath, it says something completely different.
Right. It immediately grounds that cosmic power. A father to the fatherless, a defender of widows, is God in his holy dwelling. How do those two things fit together? The cloud rider and the defender of widows.
And that's the incredible tension, or maybe the synthesis, in this psalm's view of God. He's both. He's the transcendent Lord of all creation, and he's intimately involved in the lives of the most vulnerable. His power isn't just distant, it's active on behalf of those who need it most.
And it keeps going with that theme. God sets the lonely in families. He leads forth the prisoners with singing. It's not just defense, it's like active restoration.
Think about who those people are, the fatherless, widows, the lonely, prisoners. In that ancient context, these are the people without social power, often overlooked or exploited. The psalm says God's presence, his holiness, is shown in his care for them.
Bringing people from isolation into community, from captivity into joyful freedom.
Yeah, and contrast that again with the rebellious who are left in a sun-scorched land. It reinforces that initial divide alignment with God leads to flourishing and care, even if you start from a vulnerable place, while rebellion leads to desolation.
Okay, so we've seen God's power, his character towards the vulnerable. Then verses 7 through 10 seem to shift again, looking back.
Exactly. It moves into memory, specifically recalling God's actions in Israel's history. It talks about the Exodus journey.
When you went out before your people, O God, when you marched through the wasteland, you can almost picture God leading the way through the desert.
And creation itself responds. The earth shook, the heavens poured down rain before God, the one of Sinai. It ties God's power directly to that foundational event at Sinai.
Sinai, where the covenant was made, yeah. And this earth-shaking march wasn't just about showing power, it led to something tangible.
Right. Provision. Abundant showers came down, refreshing the people, God's weary inheritance.
So historical power led to life-sustaining help. And it says, your people settled in it. And from your bounty, O God, you provided for the poor.
It connects God's past faithfulness in the wilderness and settling the land directly to his ongoing character as a provider, especially for the poor. It builds that historical foundation for his nature.
And right after verse 7, talking about that march, we see the word Selah. It appears a few times in this psalm. What do we think Selah means?
Well, the short answer is we're not entirely sure. But the general consensus among scholars is that it's probably a liturgical or musical instruction.
Like a direction for the musicians or the singers?
Exactly. Maybe a pause for reflection, an instrumental interlude, or maybe a cue for the congregation to respond or think deeply about what was just said. It's like a little marker saying, pause here, let this sink in.
Okay, like a musical breath mark.
Got it.
So after reflecting on God's past actions, verses 11 through 14 seem to jump into a victory announcement.
Yeah, the Lord announced the word, and great was the company of those who proclaimed it. And that phrase, company of those who proclaimed it, is interesting. Historically, it often referred to women.
Really? So women were the ones spreading the news of God's victory,
It seems likely, yes. They were the heralds bringing the news back from the conflict.
and the news itself.
It was decisive. Kings and armies flee in haste. In the camps, men divide the plunder. So the enemy leadership is routed, and the victory spoils are being shared out. Total win.
Okay, but then comes this line, verse 13. It feels different. Even while you sleep among the campfires, the wings of my dove are sheathed with silver, its feathers with shining gold. A dove with silver and gold wings in a war camp.
It's a really beautiful, almost startling image, isn't it? Very evocative. What's this symbol of peace and beauty doing right in the middle of dividing war plunder?
Yeah, what are the thoughts on that?
Well, there are a few interpretations. Some see it as representing the peace and security God gives his people, even when they're resting in a potentially dangerous spot. Their rest is beautiful, adorned because of God's victory.
So contrasting their secure, blessed state with the fleeing enemies.
Kind of. Or maybe it symbolizes Israel itself, made beautiful and precious through God's deliverance. It injects this moment of divine grace or beauty right into the gritty reality of war. It's definitely meant to make you pause.
It certainly does that. And then it reinforces the victory. When the Almighty scattered the kings in the land, it was like snow fallen on Zalman.
Zalman was a mountain known for being dark or maybe having snow, so the image is powerful kings just vanishing completely, like snow melting away or being blown off a dark mountain. Total disappearance, again.
Echoing that opening image of smoke and wax.
Oh.
Okay, so from victory, the psalm shifts focus in verses 15 to 18 to mountains and where God chooses to live.
Right. It mentions the majestic mountains of Bashan, describes them as rugged. Bashan was known for its impressive, imposing peaks. Think natural power, worldly grandeur.
But the psalm immediately questions their importance.
It does. It asks them, almost hauntingly, why gaze in envy, O rugged mountains, at the mountain where God chooses to reign? It's setting up a contrast.
Between the naturally impressive mountains and which mountain?
Implicitly, it's Mount Zion, Jerusalem. The point isn't about the physical size or ruggedness of the mountain. Bashan might be bigger, more visually imposing. But Zion's significance comes entirely from the fact that God chose it as his dwelling place. Divine choice trumps natural might.
God's presence makes the place important, not the other way around. And how does God arrive there?
Not quietly. The chariots of God are tens of thousands and thousands of thousands. The Lord has come from Sinai into his sanctuary. It's this image of an immense, powerful divine army, a procession connecting God's revelation at Sinai to his established sanctuary in Zion.
Wow, tens of thousands of chariots. And this leads into verse 18.
Yes, when you ascended on high, you led captives in your train, you received gifts from men, even from the rebellious, that you, O Lord God, might dwell there.
Okay, break that down. Ascending on high, leading captives, receiving gifts.
Even from rebels. It's classic ancient victor imagery. A conquering king returning to his capital city would parade his captured enemies, captives in your train, and receive tribute gifts, sometimes even from former enemies who now submitted. The psalm applies this to God ascending or establishing his presence in the sanctuary. His victory is so complete that he not only dwells among his people, but even former rebels acknowledge his reign and bring tribute.
So the goal of the conquest isn't just destruction, it's establishing this acknowledged reign, this dwelling place.
Exactly. It's about establishing God's rightful rule, recognized even by former opponents, allowing him to dwell securely among his people. It's a picture of settled, acknowledged sovereignty.
Right. Then verses 19 to 23 shift focus again, back to praise for salvation, but also some pretty intense judgment stuff comes back.
It starts very personally, though. Praise be to the Lord, to God our Savior, who daily bears our burdens. Scylla. That phrase, daily bears our burdens. That's incredibly intimate, isn't it?
Yeah, for a God with tens of thousands of chariots, he's involved in the day-to-day. And there's Selah. Again, pause and think about that.
He's our God, a God who saves, the source of escape from death. The emphasis is on personal salvation and daily support.
But then, like you said, the tone snaps back.
It does. Verse 21, surely God will crush the heads of his enemies, the hairy crowns of those who go on in their sins. It's a stark reminder of the judgment theme from the beginning. Persistent opposition to God faces utter defeat.
And verse 23, This is where the language gets very vivid, bringing enemies from Bashan, from the sea depths, so you may plunge your feet in the blood of your cows, while the tons of your dogs have their share. That's graphic.
It is graphic, no question. And when we read language like this, it's really crucial to place it in its historical and literary context. This kind of imagery, wading in blood, dogs scavenging the battlefield, was actually fairly common in ancient Near Eastern victory monuments and texts.
So kings would boast about doing this kind of thing to their enemies?
Yes, exactly. It was part of the standard language used to depict total, absolute crushing victory over one's enemies. The psalm is borrowing that known, conventional language of warfare to describe the completeness of God's ultimate victory over evil and entrenched opposition. It's using the strongest terms available in that culture to say the defeat is final and absolute.
So it's using the language of its time to convey divine judgment's finality, rather than necessarily a literal instruction.
That's how most scholars understand it. It's conveying the utter seriousness and finality of God's judgment against determined rebellion, using the powerful, albeit harsh, victory rhetoric of the era.
Okay, that context helps. It's still jarring, placed next to daily bears our burdens.
It is a stark juxtaposition, highlighting the multifaceted portrayal of God in this song.
Right. Then verses 24 to 27 shift the scene completely. We're watching a procession.
Yes, a worship procession. Your procession has come into view, O God, the procession of my God and King into the sanctuary. It's like we're witnesses to this vibrant act of worship.
And it describes who's there. In front are the singers, after them the musicians, with them are the maidens playing tambourines. You can almost hear it, can't you? The music, the celebration.
It's full of life. It shows worship as this active, communal musical event. It involves the whole great congregation, the assembly of Israel.
And it even names specific tribes participating: Benjamin, Judah, Zebulun, Naphtali.
Yeah, mentioning specific tribes, including Benjamin, little tribe, maybe leading, and the major tribe of Judah, plus northern tribes like Zebulun and Naphtali, emphasizes the national unity in this worship. All Israel is coming together to acknowledge God as king in his sanctuary.
It's the community's response to everything God has done and who he is.
Exactly. It's the fitting response to the God who saves, provides, judges, and dwells among them.
Okay, so the psalm is heading towards its conclusion now, verses 28 to 35. This seems to broaden the scope right out.
It does. It starts with a plea for God's power to continue. Summon your power, O God. Show us your strength as you have done before. It's linking future hope to past actions.
And connects that power to the temple. Because of your temple at Jerusalem, kings will bring you gifts. So God's presence in Jerusalem will draw international recognition.
And then it gets specific about potential adversaries, using symbolic language. Rebuke the beast among the reeds.
Which is likely Egypt, right? Nile Egypt.
Very likely. The herd of bulls among the calves of the nations, probably representing other powerful, potentially hostile nations and their leaders.
And the goal is either their submission bringing bars of silver as tribute, or for God to scatter the nations who delight in war. It's about establishing peace through God's power.
And the vision expands beyond just potential enemies. It names specific major powers. Envoys will come from Egypt. Cush, modern Sudan, Ethiopia area, will submit herself to God. These weren't small players. These were significant kingdoms acknowledging the God of Israel.
Wow, so the vision becomes truly international, and that leads into a final massive call to praise.
Yes. Sing to God, O kingdoms of the earth. Sing praise to the Lord, Selah. The call goes global. All kingdoms are invited to praise. And another Selah, pause and absorb that universal scope.
Who are they praising?
Him who rides the ancient skies above, who thunders with mighty voice. It echoes the rides on the clouds, but emphasizes his eternal sovereign power over all creation.
And the final verses really bring it home, connecting God's universal power back to his people. Proclaim the power of God, whose majesty is over Israel, whose power is in the skies.
It shows that God's special relationship with Israel doesn't limit his power. Rather, his majesty over Israel is a demonstration of his universal power.
And the very last line. You are awesome, O God, in your sanctuary. The God of Israel gives power and strength to his people. Praise be to God.
It perfectly ties it all together. God's awesome presence in his chosen place results in tangible power and strength for his people. It circles right back. The immense power that scatters enemies is the same power that strengthens the community.
What a journey through one psalm. From that initial fierce image of scattering enemies, through God's care for the vulnerable, recalling his historic acts, the victory celebrations, the procession, that challenging judgment language, and ending with this vision of universal recognition and God empowering his own people.
It's incredibly rich, isn't it? So many layers. God the warrior, the father, the king, the provider, the judge, the source of strength. It holds together these seemingly contrasting aspects of divine power and presence.
Absolutely. You know, thinking about that whole sweep from scattering enemies to receiving gifts even from rebels to finally giving strength to his people in his sanctuary, what does that suggest about the ultimate point of God's power in this psalm? It feels like it's moving towards something beyond just winning battles. What's the end game? That's maybe something for you, the listener, to really chew on.
That's a great question. It seems the psalm portrays power not as an end in itself, but as a means to establish God's just reign, to create a space for his presence among his people, to care for the vulnerable, and ultimately to draw all creation, even former enemies, into acknowledging his sovereignty and strengthening those aligned with him. Power serves purpose, presence, and people.
A lot to reflect on there. Thanks so much for walking us through that.
My pleasure. It's a powerful piece of writing.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.